was in a city of Bnei Brak, is well-known city in Israel. A fellow was served for many years as the Chazan, as the Baal Tfilah, the one who represent the community, as a prayer leader, whose name is Segal, Rab Segal. And unfortunately, he get killed by one of these terrorist attacks on the bus several years ago. So the story goes that right after the Shiva, the 7 days period, was completed, his family member have a very strong dream. And in the dream, he saw Rab Segal ask him to go to one of his fund and to pull out 14 shekel. 14 shekel is maybe about $5. And to give it to Mr. So-and-so. And he said, do it soon, because they don't let me in the world to come. That's what happened. The guy woke up, he was all sweat. He started searching. He went to that fellow, mentioned his name, and he said, no, he doesn't owe me anything. So the family member gets all excited and they said, you take first the money and then let us search. So in very short, they search and turned that years back, Rav Segal was a teacher in it's a street over there called Vorah Neviah. There is a Talmud Torah called Torah Temet. And they went to a school trip. And the child of that fellow was basically one of the travelers, one of the kids on the bus. And since Rav Segal was in charge, he said that to that child he didn't pay. And the child said, I did pay. So Rav Segal said, I don't have it in my record. So he went back to his parents and he bought back the money as a child. And that happened about 20 years earlier. And it turns, after they check all the records and everything, that it was really double charge for that child. Now think together with me. This tzaddik, this righteous man, Rav Segal, he said he cannot enter to Olam Haba, to the world of truth, if that money is not being paid. So here we are in the very painful subject, this second chapter, dealing with the dispute between newly married couple. Here, the problem is the Ketubah, the marriage agreement, was lost, and each of them has a different claim. And the difference between the two, she wants 200, in those days it's called zuz, is the currency, and he said, no, you have 100. That's what you deserve. So basically the disputation is over 100 zuz that creates this turmoil. But the lesson is obvious that we have to be very careful with this. So we have a general term that said that the same mouth, the same notion that allows something, the same commitment, even a verbal commitment, have the same power to abrogate the previous one. So what I like to share with you is the concept of migo, which we discussed earlier. Migo meaning when someone comes before us and he or she said something and we said, okay, we accepted that because of migo, meaning that person said, look, if I want to lie to you, I have a way to lie and make, for example, way more money or way more things. The fact that I am here, tell you something, it means I'm saying the truth. And part of our discussion is when we accepting that ta'anat migo, that claim that come from the concept of the Talmud, it's a Aramaic migo, and we're not. That's part of our discussion. There is another concept we learn, which is le'achar dibur, which means we differentiate between a person that come to us and speak naturally, Mesiach lefi tumo, he's just talking, versus someone that you discover that he tried to fix something he said. You know, when you do a cross-examination, when you do a testimony from someone, it turns that they realize that something is not right. It's some exaggeration of the truth, to say the least. So they come back and say, no, I meant something else, right? So we have to differentiate between something that was said at that time versus something that happened later. An example. People sit Shiva, okay? Sons of a man sitting Shiva. Someone came and he's talking to them. And he said, you know, the house I'm living now used to belong to your father. And the sons look at him and says, what are you talking about? We never heard that the father owned that house. And you have the papers, you have a document that he sold it to you? And the elderly man said, I lost everything, I don't have anything. Now here is the difference. If no one else can come in to approve it, then we take his word. But it can turn around when they complete the Shiva. In our simple language, they take a lawyer and start suing, right? And how someone said, in America, for some people, they wake up in the morning and they're thinking, whom should I sue today? So those after him try to prove the transactions. So if there are elderly people there that said, yeah, we remember that he sold it to you, then it's a total different story. So that's the idea, le'achar dibur. If it happened naturally during the conversation or it happens later. So here we are, at the beginning of chapter 2, which is on the bottom of page 15b. Ketubah, which is the rabbinic agreement for marriage, the rabbinic institution of contract, has a total definition of monetary responsibility between the groom and the bride. When it's betula, when it's a total first virgin marriage, it's 200. In those days, as we said, is 200 zuz. Like in modern days, we call it dollars, right? And for the one who's a second marriage, either by being divorced or being a widow, is 100. Now, האישה שנתערמלה או שנתגרשה, היא אומרת בתולה נשאתני, והוא אומר לא, קחי, אלא אלמנה נשאתיך. This couple come before us. Short time after they got married, can be the next day. And it's a fight. She, either a widow or divorced, and she said, no, when we married, I was virgin. And therefore, I deserve to get how much? 200. And she said, no, I married you as a widow. And if I marry you as a widow, you deserve how much?
As a widow, 100.
100. So Tosfot tells us that the disputation, the vikuach, is a sug ketubah. What type of marriage agreement they have between the two? What's the disputation? If she is a widow or she is divorcee, so the disputation is either between him and her, or another option, it's between his children and her. If it's a 100 or 200. So here is the big difference. אם יש עדים שיצאת בהינומה וראשה פרוע כתובתה מתי? Meaning, in those days, when they lead the kala, the bride, to a chuppah, they used to see her hair in full, right? As you know, the law of modesty the idea of being very modest applies in many communities, in many cultures, in many religion, etc. But even in a religious community, it was an exception in order to make her very attractive to the husband. She used to go out to the chuppah with the hair out. Again, it's a big discussion when, where, and how, and what condition, but in general. So the key point is singlehood. Part of that, or the idea that this is the first time, was the hair out in full. Okay? So if there are witnesses that said, oh, we remember her wedding, two people come before us and said, remember when she got married, and she had this hinuma. Later the Gemara explained, but it means that she have a hair out, and verosha parua, right? Therefore, she received how much?
200.
200.
Question: when they're talking about this, is there the assumption that there was no written ketubah, or?
No, we just said at the beginning it was lost.
Okay, it was lost. Okay.
Part of disputation, for example, if she have a fight with his children, he's gone, is no written proof.
Right. Okay.
In those days, it was pre-era of computers, so you don't have anything recorded.
Was a written ketubah generally a requirement in Talmudic days as well, or
yes,
even
that's
in
a requirement in some mean, because you have to remember that part of betrothed can be other ways.
Right. But the ketubah would be at the time of kiddushin, right?
Yes, it was a shtar. But imagine the situation: they go to Amazonas.
No, I understand. It can get lost.
Of hotels there, right? And it's lost.
Yeah.
Now, a couple cannot live together without ketubah, as you know. But here they come to divorce.
And which male or female really keeps it in their possession when they're together?
They have to have it all the time. She have to have it all the time.
It's really hers. I mean, she owns it. Right?
There is a concept we talked in the past. It's called Ketubah de irkesa, meaning if the Ketubah is lost and we don't know where is the Ketubah, they need to come before the rabbi, the local rabbi, and he write some type of duplicate Ketubah, replacement, because husband and wife cannot live under the roof without Ketubah, and by any means. Anyway, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka omer, אף חילוק כליות ראיה. In those days, what did they do? They used to do, like in modern days, give the kids expensive candies. In those days, it was a real expensive produce. Not the cheap one you buy in the dollar store, expensive. So there are people who come in and said, and that applied only for the first marriage. That was the minhag in those days. So we remember all the goodies that was given at that time, and they go at length to details, right? So if they have, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka said, if there are witnesses that said, we remember that, so it's a first marriage, she's virgin, it's 200. Now the truth is, again, Tosfot tells us that the whole Ta'anat Migo have some application, because here the question is, those children remember. Now they're adult, right? But they remember that they serve those nuts or whatever it is. Okay? So that's part of the credit. She's credible in that sense, because they have Ta'anat Migo. Now, the truth is, the Meiri and others ask, wait a second, we have an institution of Wednesday. Remember the Wednesday, the day that they got married? So how about that? There's a discussion, because they try to say some that it wasn't only for the first marriage, some said that it was an exception. So in short, Wednesday was not part of the discussion. The next part in the Mishnah, Umodeh Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua agreed, concede. With him we concede. We are now talking about a new case. So much later in the Gemara we need to understand, what does that mean, Umodeh, that he concedes? What the concede has to do with anything. But anyway, a new subject. Be'omer lechavero. Someone said to his fellow, you see this field? Sadeh zo shel avicha ita. This orchard or this house or this property used to belong to your father. Ulkachtia emenu. And guess what? I purchased from him. So you have here Reuven and Shimon. Let's call these two guys. And Reuven said to Shimon, you see, I bought this property from your late father. Shehu Ne'eman, that you take his word. Okay? So, 16, Shehape, Shehasar, Hu Hape Sheitir. So the son of Shimon, without having Reuven come and declare that that property belonged to his late father, he will never find out. We're going to study on page 22 a statement by Rav Asi that elaborates on that. But that's part of the mindset of Migo. Right? Because this guy, Reuven, said, hey, I told you that. You never find out this. So what is your story? Right? Anyway, ואם יש עדים שהיא של אביו, והוא אומר לקחתי ממנו אינו נעמד. But as we said, remember the story? The elderly people was there, and they remember. So that's a different story. We said it so many times. When a person claims that someone owes him something, he has the burden of proof that it is truth. Otherwise, you cannot declare any valuable item, especially monetary item, without some evidence. Can be document, can be witnesses that we accept.
Because he can always just say, you gave it to me. You gave it to me as a present or something. I don't have to give it to you back.
Or he said it never happened.
Well, right. But even if he has it in his possession, he just say, I gave it to you. You gave it to me. You know.
So here the difference. If he was just talking, soon you see, it's one concept. If he backed out, changed his version, elderly people came and declared differently, then it's a different story. So here, you should know, there is a book called Kovetz Shiurim. It's a wonderful book written by a giant late rabbi, Rav Elchanan Wasserman, and it's on this tractate Ketubot that he have a big building of explanation over this concept of this Mishnah and the idea of Ta'anat Migo. Chezkat Ne'eman, to have someone who's in a trust. This is something that the sages give, that a person, when he is talking, as we said, he just come to the Shiva house and he talking and said, you know, that apartment I have or I lived is from your father. We basically take that Ta'anat Migo. Because one of the things is, as we said in Migo, is toch kedei dibur, if a person just speaking naturally, and nothing there. Mm-hmm. But the idea is, Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman explained, and I just give you the vignette. The idea is that the moment the version changed by any means, then the whole Migo is disappear. Migo is applied saying, you know what, if I want to make money, or if I want to lie, or if I want to, you look, I can make 10 times more, or I can change the version and make it 10 times different. By being honest and tell you the way it is, you should appreciate that, etc. Anyway, as I said, there's a book, Kovetz Shiurim. The Gemara said, Tama the Ika Edim. The whole idea that this woman is it trustworthy to say that she was virgin and it's first marriage and she received 200? It's because she have witnesses that said, yes, we don't have any document, but they remember her with open hair, for example, right? So they knew, and they give a testimony, right? They testified before the court. You just should know that when you have those witnesses, there has to be people that we trust. And sometimes you ask people to take an oath, etc. And the assumption is that people don't place their hand on a Torah and take an oath for something that is total lie. We assume that way, right? That far people will not go, right? But the idea is you have two witnesses that declare they remember the wedding and they remember her going with her open hair, and therefore we take this word and we say that she's trustworthy and we give her the 200, right? Now, but you see, remember the story I told you about Rav Segal? You see how the rabbis are sensitive over every single penny to make sure that people are not being abused by any means, right? But if there are not witnesses, meaning you just need to take her word versus his word, here we go back to old business, Baal Ne'eman. Meaning, she by nature, we have Chezkat Betula, we believe that soon you see that most of the women get married, and that's the way it is. But otherwise is the burden of proof. Hamutzi mechavero alav haraya. When Reuven come and declare that Shimon owes him money, Reuven has the burden of proof that he really owes him money, right? Leimat nan stama delo keRabban Gamliel. You remember on page 12, we studied the concept of Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel tells us in 3, or actually you can say 4 different cases, that we take her word, period. The Rabban Gamliel amar ihi me'emna. Number 1, mishe'erastani ne'enasti. Remember we said that she said, after we engaged, I was raped. Or for example, she said, I have this wooden part that penetrated. Or for example, they see her talking to someone, and we have a discussion over the talking mean. So therefore, Rabban Gamliel said in all those cases, if you remember, that we take her words and we believe her. But here, you may challenge that and said, maybe this concept here in Mishnah is not followed the view of Rabban Gamliel. So the Gemara said, Afilu teima Rabban Gamliel. Ad kan lo kama Rabban Gamliel atam ela bebari veshema. Meaning, you have a claim that it's total certain. You have a claim that it's a half and a half. It's uncertain. Meaning, she said, Mishe'erastani ne'esatani. She said that I was virgin. And the husband said, Pedach patuach matzati. Right? So here you have her claim that is certain, his claim that maybe not. So either you combine the migo, or aval hacha bebari ubari. But here it's clear that she said that she's virgin. And he said, no, it's clear to me that we got married, she was widow. Lo amar. So even she have a very strong claim that she was virgin, but the Ritva explained to us, since she declared money, if it's a good reputation is one thing, but if she won, she's suing him over money, she still have the burden of proof that she is right and not him. Udeka'arela, mai ka'arela, ha bari ubariu, which means each of them have ta'anat bari. Each of them claim that I am definite. One is almost like politician, right? Each party said that I hold the total truth, right? Do you know what I'm talking about? Soon you see the campaign, so you know what I'm saying, right? So each of them claim that is 100% correct. I am correct. He said, you are lying, right? I married you widow. She said, you are lying. We married, I was virgin. Now I ask you a question, my dear friends. Who is saying the truth? Gilbert, what do you think? Who's saying the truth? She said, you are lying. We got married, I was virgin. He said, you are lying. I married you, you are a widow. Who's saying the truth? Each of them claim that they are the truthful one. No witnesses, no documents. What do? You have her word versus his word. So far we claim and said, we take both words. But since she is the one who's after him to get money from him, she have the burden of proof to prove what? Not so much that he is wrong, but she is right. Okay? So the Gemara said, Keivan derov nashim betulot nisaot, ki bari v'shem adame. You know what's Rabban Gamliel view here? He says, especially in those days, he said that most of the women got married, they're virgin. And because that's what happened, the assumption, David will tell you by statistic, that she most probably was virgin. So that's already bari, that was already strong claim. Now, therefore, Rabban Gamliel said that that's mistabra, that's more rational, that's more logical. Therefore, he takes her word. Now, you remember we asked in the Mishnah who said the word umodeh, whom Rabbi Yoshua agree upon. So here is the discussion. והכנם מסתברא מדקטני, מודה רבי יהושע, יאמר בשלמה אי רבן גמליאל במודה שפיר, אלא יאמר לא אי רבן גמליאל במודה רבי יהושע למען מודה. So what we see here that Rabban Gamliel agreed modeh in the Reisha, in the first clause. Rabbi Yoshua agreed in a Seifa. So how the Seifa, the last clause of the Mishnah match? Remember, it's two different properties, two different domain in that discussion. The Gemara rejected that, said, Mi savar Rabbi Yoshua, ahai pirkin kai, el amigo kai ba pirkin kama kai. So it means that if a person is acquiesced, if you have the Tanat Migo and he display equanimity, we take this word. And that basically looks the other way than the first clause, ahaya. You know that in the first chapter we have 4 locations. You see disputation between Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yoshua. If you remember on pages 12, page 13. So which Mishnah we apply here? If you remember, it's presented in the opposite order. Ileima aha hayta mu'beret v'amru la mativo shel ubar zeh. If she was pregnant, they said, what does that mean? From whom? This is pre-DNA era, right? So מאיש פלוני וכהנו. רבן גמליאל ורבי אליעזר אומר, נאמרת רבי שמעון מפי אנו חיים. You remember that discussion that Rabban Gamliel said we take her word. She said this is the father of the baby. And the others said no. Rabbi Yoshua said we can take it, but she has the burden of proof. My migo igar krista ben shinea. She's pregnant. So what type of migo you have here? Rabbi Akiva Iger elaborates on that. Anyway, Ela, we don't have time. Ela, aha, ראו המדברת עם אחאב אמרו למה תיבוש לזה. That's in page 13. We have discussion. You can visit there. We have it now on the internet, right? So you can visit that page, see the discussion. They see her talking to someone. They ask her, who is this? איש פלוני וכהנו, רבן גמליאל ורבי אליעזר אומר נאמת רבי יהושע אומר לו מפי אנו חיים. The same manner of discussion. הטה מגויקה, הניחא לזעירי. זעירי, מה היא מדברת? נסתרה. זעירי said that the manner of talk, it's basically being secluded within. מיגודי ביד אמרן לא נבלתי, וכאמרה נבלתי מהם נעל רבסי דאמר, מה היא מדברת נבלת, מה היא מיגויקה? You don't have a migo here at all. As we said, we get backward. So now is the third option. ולהה, היא אומרת מוקרת עצני. She claimed with that wood. והוא אומר לא חי אלא דרוסת אישת. Again, we have a long discussion, page 13 on that. רבן גמליאל ורבי אליעזר אומר נאמר רבי יהושע אומר לו מפי אנו חיים, מהי מיגו איכא בישלום על רבי אלעזר דאמר במנה ולא כלום. מיגו דיה אמרה מוקת עצני תחתיך והית ל200 וכמה מעיקר דעת לה למנה מהמנה. אל רבי יוחנן דאמר ב200 ובנה מיגו איכא. You see, the only difference is 100. So, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, that you said that you have here migo, that she can come with much better than the previous one. In either way, Rashi explained it's a 200. Ela aha, הנושא את האישה, you have to go much earlier, as you see, backward we're going. So now we're going to page 12, the Mishnah. And they said, הנושא את האישה ולא מצא לבתולים, היא אומרת מי שרסה לנסתני, אם נסתחפה השדה. Remember that the husband said that she wasn't virgin, and she said, guess what? After we betrothed, which I was a virgin, all of a sudden someone raped me. Right? So what should I do? Remember, we compare it to someone, you're buying a car, remember that? You're buying a car, you're walking in the car shop, 5 minutes later is a hurricane, you walk out the car and the car is kaput. Alright? So you can't blame the car salespeople or the company, correct? Mm-hmm. So here she claimed, I was virgin. What happened there? Some criminal came and raped me. So therefore I deserve to get to 100. והוא אומר לו חי אלעד שלא יסתיך. He said, no, you fool me, it happens before. רבן גמליאל ורבי אליעזר אומרים נאמנת, רבי יהושע אומר לו מפי אנוכיים. The same manner of disputation. דמיגו, דבעי אמרה מוקד עץ אני תחתיך לא כפס לנפשי מכהונה, וכאמרה לנסתי לכפס לנפשי מכהונה, because the moment she claimed that she is raped, that's much stronger, and therefore she is no longer can befitting to marry a Kohen. Versus if it's a mukat etz, that's a different story, right? משומחי כאמר רבן גמליאל דמאמנה. וכאמר רבי יהושע לרבן גמליאל באי מיגו דאחא מודין הלך. This type of migo, I go along with you manner. That if it's a matter of property and from your father, etc., I agree that he is trustworthy. But migo da'atam paligna alavai. But that migo in the Mishnah that you claim in the first parak, which means that after I engaged to you, I was raped, this I disputed you, and I hold that we cannot take her word as a credible word. So now after we clarify the whole concept of Rabbi Yehoshua in the Mishnah, that it basically applies to the Mishnah of Misher Astani Ne'enasti, so now we get better understanding why we use the word Modeh Rabbi Yehoshua, that Rabbi Yehoshua concedes. Migdei Ai Migo ve'Ai Migo, you have two different Migos here. Because the first one that claimed that the rape took place after the engagement, so she had the Migo. And if someone said to his fellow, this property used to belong to his father, he's also have a Migo. Ma'ishna Ai Migo, Ma'ai Migo. So why we differentiate between two claims of Migo? The Gemara said, Hacha en shor shachul lefanecha. There is a Rashi here, I explained in my book. Rashi said, Hacha gabe sadeh en shor shachul lefanecha, שעליה לב בעליו לתבוע משחתו. כלומר, אם שתק זה לא היו לו עוררים. So there is a huge disputation among the Rishonim. What does that mean? The Gemara in Nida, page 15, have that's part of the discussion when it's come to issue of blood, etc. The whole concept when we depend on a migo or when not. You have Tosfot, you have Ramban, Ra'ah, Ritva, Ran, and for sure you have the Baal HaMaor and the Rabbi Akiva Higer. So it's way above the scope of the shiur today, but it's pages and pages and pages that I wrote over this Rashi. So anyone with time, you're welcome to read here. The big question is how you have the two disputation of Migo, how you solve it, or the two claim of Migo. Hacha, hare shor shachul lefanecha. So you have here, in a sense, a proof before you. Anyway, so there is a reason to question her virginity, and it is only in response to that question that she makes her claim. So although it is supported by Migo, Rabbi Yehoshua does not accept her claim. וכיוון דרוב נשים בתולות נישאות, since in that time, as we said, the fact is that most women marry virgin, כי לה עטו עדים מהווה, if there's no witness, so what of it? So אמר אבינה משום דיקרא ממרות רוב נשים בתולות נישאות, ומיעוט אלמנות, the majority are the widows or non-virgin, so there is additional presumption. וכל הנעשית בתולה יש לה קול, which means someone who married the first one, it's a publicized, it's a promulgate, people know about it. Page 16b, וזו איל ואין לה קול, but since this woman doesn't have, it wasn't broadcast, it wasn't known, איתרא לרובה, the effect of the majority is undermined. So therefore, it's an issue, and again, the whole disputation is over 100. But for our discussion, it's not only the 100. It's the concept, who really deserves the money. Is he needs to pay her, or he is free from that? Who is right? Because, as we said, people don't know about it. And since no one heard about it, we assume that these two witnesses, who knows, maybe they get paid in some way, or who knows what's happening with them, why they come and testify. Right? אלא אמר אבינה, רוב הנישאת בתולה יש לה קול, וזול ואין לה קול יתרה לרובה. So again, sometimes those women who get married, first time. It's not publicized. This one, because it's all these questions that we're not sure, so you have the majority, and against the majority meaning most of the women married virgin, and versus most of the woman virgin married, people know about it. So therefore, you cannot claim money, because we go back to the business that the burden of proof, you have to have a proof that it's in order to collect the money, you have to have a proof. Either witnesses, document. Rashbam in Bava Batra, page 92, explain it at length. But anyway, what we said in the Mishnah, if there are witnesses to see that it was a wedding, I remember the wedding, and she have a very special hair stylist that made her hair in special, and people remember the whole occasion. So then she reserved 200, the Mishnah said. So they said, alright, maybe she gets, as we said, she gets two people to come up for all kind of reason and testify for her, and just to get it over, to get the money. For example, trace the situation. She goes to two guys and said, look, you can get easily 20 zoos for nothing. Here's the deal. I need 200. He wants to give me 100. Okay, so we split. You go and testify that you see my wedding and my hair open, right? And then when they approve it, I get another 100 from my ex, and each of you will get 20, and I will collect the rest, right? For example, right? And all of a sudden, she can come back to a different beddin, and she come back with the Ketubah and collect it. So Amar Rabbi Abahu, זאת אומרת, כותבים שובר, which means, beside of that, you have some type of receipt. In those days, they call it shovar. So when she collect the money, whatever the beddin and the sides agreed, they providing also from her a document. What is called 1098, 1099 nowadays? What is called, right?
1099 is a tax document.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
That if you paid someone more than $600, or right? Is that correct? That person.
It's 1099 is contract payment.
Yes. So it's I think the law is, if I'm not mistaken, in this state, right? That if it's more than the $600, the contractor needs to provide social security and information or whatever it is, and some documentation that they receive a certain payment. I'm on target, right?
Yes.
So here the same thing. She needs to write some type of letter, and she cannot take that case, that Ketubah, and sue him in different location, because they have remember, those days wasn't communication. So she basically can move from here to São Paulo, Brazil, right? Because she know that he moved there with a new girlfriend or new wife, right? And she take him again to a bedding in São Paulo and sue him again. So if she give him a receipt, that avoid that, right? So they said, Rav Papa Amar, Makom she'en kotevim Ketubah askinan. Here we talk about location, as David asked earlier, in the place that during the marriage it wasn't Ketubah. They just go by the Tnai Bedin, which is the rabbi's consent, that is 200 for virgin and 100 for widow, and they collected without documentation. So we assume that she will not going to resue him again in different location. ואיכא דמקלא בתרייתא, איבדה כתובתה, הטמינה כתובתה, נשרפה כתובתה. Three different situations. Either she lost the Ketubah, the marriage agreement, or she hiding it in some place and she doesn't remember where she hid it, or it's burned. So she said that we married, I was virgin. He said, no, we are widow. רקדו לפניה, שיחקו לפניה, העבירו לפניה כוס של בשורה. That was the minhag, the different customs that they used to do at that time. They danced before her, which we still do, but in that time in particular for the first marriage, they did all kind of things that in my wedding, I think it's in my kitchen. You can see a picture of a guy Karishevsky was named 30 years ago. He carries a child on the chair while he carries the chair on his mouth. Did you see that picture? So anyway, they used to do things, remind me, I'll show you.
It's Russians.
All right, Russian guy.
Yeah.
He took, listen to this, he took on his mouth, he took on his hand a child sitting on a chair, little child, and then he put it on his mouth and he danced. I have pictures. Anyway, so they used to do all kind of things at that time, right? So that particularly for the first marriage, right? Or mapa shel betulin, that's again the minhag at that time, a special sheet so that they can differentiate between the time before and after. אם יש לעדים באחד מכולל וכתובתם 200, if there are witnesses to any of the matter which we just mentioned, she deserved to receive 200. So the Gemara said, ולאיחוש דילמה, מפקה עדים באי בדינה וגביה, ועד מפקה לכתובתה באי בדינה וגביה באי. She wants to collect. Unfortunately, some people does that not only for money, but sometimes act of revenge, right? So she go to different locations, she try to recollect, as we said. So אמר רבי אבאו, זאת אומרת כותבים שובר, as we said. רב פאב אומר, מקום שהם כותבים כתובה עסקינן. So he said, ואי יבדק כתובתה תני, we just talk about the law. So he said, לכתב לה איהו, which means that he differentiate from the minhag hamakom, from the tradition at that location, and he wrote a Ketubah agreement, and she said that she lost it. So the Gemara said, sof, if that's the case, mapkala vegavyala, so she can recollect it. So ma ibda ba'ur, it burned. So you're not concerned that she going yache aynu nisrafa. So it's the same as we said earlier. Overall, itmina ma'ikal lememar v'tu ibda la'amali. Ela, you have to say kol ibda כי התמינה בפנינו דמי ולא יבינה לה עד האמרי ידין נשרפה כתובתה. Again and again and again, what you see here, you can take words for anybody over anything. But when it's a claim that involved with money, it's a different story, right? She needs to bring, for example, witnesses that they danced before her, and it was this manner of first time marriage, and then she collected 200. מה נאמרת לה דברייתא כל שכן המתניתים? So here the difference between the one who learned the Braita but not the Mishna, which is she lost the Ketubah or Hitmina, but if you go by the second one, that's the place that they don't have the manner of which they're writing the Ketubah. Im Yeshedim, so that we have to rush. If Yeshedim, the Mishnah said, if there are witnesses that she went out of her father's house to her wedding with the hinuma or with her hair uncovered in a manner typical of virgin, payment of her marriage contract is 200 dinars, 200 zuz. So that's the Mishnah. So they said, as we said, she either wants to take revenge or wants to take money. So she takes the two witnesses, they come before the Bedin and said the wedding was with the open hair, right? And then she goes to a different city and she bring these two witnesses and collect money. So they said, "Makom de lo efshar vaday kadvinan shova." So the hero of Papa agreed that they have to write this manner of receipt, so she cannot collect money. The
lady shouldn't have the hair uncovered.
We have a discussion. The Yerushalmi have a discussion that in general they have a modesty. But it was a certain location, the Yerushalmi said that they allow that only at that period of time, which is the time of the getting married, to be more attractive to her newly husband. Anyway.
But then they had to cover it over.
Okay. So next
cover it up after that. Even they would say you have to cover it over.
I said again, it's a Shalot V'Tshuvot is a response of Beit HaLevi that he discussed in this. How come they allow it and what the condition allow it. Anyway, he brought the Yerushalmi.
Why don't you do it today? They don't really allow it.
Each community is a different story. But anyway, you have to differentiate between the time that she's leading to the chuppah and time afterward. Over there, in those days, that was one of the proof that it was the first marriage. העבירו לפניה כוס של בשורה. My כוס של בשורה? It's a cup of the good tidings. אמר רבא דמר רבא, כוס יין של תרומה מעבירים לפניה. כלומר, here you see the word klomar in the Gemara, right? I don't have time to explain it, but it's a reason for that. It's the idea that it's a sign that she is a virgin. She is befitting to eat truma, because if she was married to Cohen, she is befitting to eat the truma.
Yeah.
Since she is a virgin, because if she is not, so sometimes it can turn that she cannot eat the truma. So this the matkif la Rafa ba'ato almana mi lo achla b'truma. Is that true that a widow that married a regular kohen, not kohen gadol, she's not eating a truma?
Right.
So what type of sign you have here of good tiding? Amar Papa, reishit ki truma, reishit, which means he said the cup of truma is passed before her to indicate that this bride is first, as she has not yet engaged in manner of cohabitation. So like truma, it's a gift, it's the first gift separated from the produce.
Yeah, because
So that's the way they do it.
If she divorces the Kohen and marries Israel, she no longer
No
can eat
longer.
the truth.
But that's the idea of when the Torah said in Devorim, Yudchet, Deuteronomy 18, that Reshit, that you take the first of your produce and you give it, that's the first one. So it's the same, we juxtapose the two. Tanya Rav Yehuda אומר, חבית שלי הם מעברים לפניה, אומר רב אבא ברבא, בתולה מעברים לפניה, פסטומה, באולם, מעברים לפניה, חבית פתוחה. So if it's, she's the first time to bring a seal barrel. Otherwise, if it's פתח פתוח, so they open. The barrel that is open. Amai. Why you do that? נעבר כמה בולה וכמה בולה לא נעבר כלל. So you do just for the virgin. The one is not, you don't do it. זימנה דתף סמתיים. Sometimes she claim for 200. Either she will go to his inheritors, the heir, without bedin, and she said, I deserve 200. ואמרה אנא בתולה אביי. She claimed that when they married, she was virgin. והיידה לא עברו כמה, יתנוסו יתנסו. It was, for example, they get drunk during the wedding, they are all, spacing out or whatever it is, and therefore they don't do this minhag of passing that barrel. So since they put this decree to have this barrel also before the one who's not, so therefore they can come and bear witness that it wasn't open. So if even she come before the heirs and they collect 200, you can get it back if it wasn't truthful. So the truth is, there is a Ramban, there is a Tosfot, and there's much more to discuss, but running out of time.
לשולוים, מלאכי השולוים, מלאכי